This tutorial deals with nomenclature of molecular compounds. Molecular compounds are made up of two nonmetals. Unlike our ionic compounds, it has its own naming system that goes along. Now with our molecular compounds and our two nonmetals, we're going to be using prefixes. Prefixes vary for the number or the amount of elements we have in this molecular compound, being mono 1, di 2, tri 3, tetra like Tetris 4, penta 5, hexa 6, hepta 7, octa 8, and deca 10. Now when we're looking at a prefix, there are a little bit of rules. Never use mono on the first, even if there's only one. It's guaranteed that it is one if you don't have a prefix for the first one. Now if you have a second one that's one, you must use the mono prefix. And also our second rule is that you're going to change the ending of the second anion to IDE. So let's jump right in and try our first example. We have CO2. Now you look behind and figure out how much of each one has. Now C only has one, but our first rule was no mono on the first element you have. So it's just going to come down as carbon. We look at our oxygen has 2. We go back to our chart and we'll see that 2 means di. So we'll say carbon di. Oxygen? Not quite. Our second rule was change the second to IDE. So it's carbon dioxide. And that's your first molecular compound. Now let's try CCl4. We have C as a 1. Is it going to be monocarbon? No, our first rule says that no mono on the first if there's only one. So we're still going to have carbon here. We look behind our second one, we have 4, so its prefix is going to be tetra. So we have carbon, tetra, and then our Cl, chlorine, becomes chloride because the second ending changes to IDE. And our last example, we're going to have PCl5. So P is 1, still no prefix as it's mono. Now notice how our first one's names did not change. So it's going to be phosphorus. And then Cl has a prefix of 5. So we'll go back to our chart. And penta is our 5. So phosphorus, penta. Chlorine goes to chloride. So our last example is phosphorus pentachloride. Now naming molecular compounds is the easier of the two in my opinion. The hardest part is going to be telling the difference between an ionic and molecular compound. Easiest way to do that, once you see that it's two nonmetals or the first is not a metal, use your prefix system. Thank you for watching and hope to see you at our next tutorial.